My manager looked me dead in my face and called me worthless. He ain't know that in 24 hours, I'd be the one signing his termination papers. But before I fired him in front of God and everybody, I had to let him play himself and humiliate me one last time. This whole mess started 3 months ago, all thanks to a little test my pops set up. He had to know if I was ready to take over the family empire. The mission seemed simple on paper. I had to go undercover with a fake name, zero cash, in the worst performing building our company owned, and figure out how to turn it around. He called it the Crucible. I called it Hell on Earth. The property was the Oakwood Apartments, a sad, concrete block of a building that smelled like straight-up regret and boiled cabbage. The name itself was a joke. It wasn't an oak tree for miles, just cracked-up pavement and dumpsters that were always spilling over. My father's real estate empire is all about luxury high-rises and shiny office buildings. This place was a forgotten stain on the books, basically a rounding error on the quarterly reports. And for the next 3 months, it was my new spot. I became Leo, a down-on-his-luck writer in some beat-up clothes, renting the smallest unit they had on the ground floor. The apartment was a shoebox. It came with a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed all day, and a stain on the carpet I swear had its own zip code. It was a whole different world from the life I knew, but I was determined to prove myself. The real issue at Oakwood wasn't the peeling paint or the loud pipes, though. It was the man in charge, Mr. Harrison. I ran into him on my very first day. I saw him down the hall just yelling at this sweet old lady, Mrs. Gable, a woman who'd lived in that building for over 20 years. Her crime? She put a little welcome mat outside her door. "This ain't a flea market, Brenda," he barked, his face turning all red and splotchy. "It's a fire hazard. Get rid of it, or I'm adding a hallway clutter fine to your rent." He kicked the mat, sending it sliding down the hall, then stormed off like he'd done something important. Mrs. Gable just stood there, her shoulders all slumped, and quietly picked it up. That was my first taste of Mr. Harrison. He wasn't just a manager. He was a petty tyrant running a kingdom of decay, and you could tell he loved every miserable second of it. In the weeks that followed, I saw that Harrison's cruelty wasn't for nothing. It was a hustle. He'd spun this whole web of fake fees and bogus rules just to squeeze every last dime out of people who were already struggling. He had an emergency maintenance surcharge, a $20 fee he slapped on everybody's rent, even though the only maintenance I ever saw was Harrison changing a light bulb in his own office. He had package handling fees for boxes left in the lobby and threatened to evict folks for the smallest complaint. He was a predator, plain and simple, and the tenants were his prey. Sooner or later, I knew it would be my turn. The ancient faucet in my kitchen started leaking, a steady drip, drip, drip. That was about to drive me crazy. I found Harrison in the lobby, messing with a plant that was already dead. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrison," I said, trying to be cool about it. "My sink is leaking. Can you get somebody to check it out?" He turned and looked me up and down with pure disgust. His eyes locked on my worn-out jeans. "A leak, you say?" He let out this dry, ugly laugh. "Listen, pal, people like you are lucky to have a roof over your head at all. You got running water, right? So it drips a little, builds character. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." He just walked off, leaving me standing there feeling foolish. The humiliation was real, like a hot flash crawling up my neck. I could have ended it, right then and there. One phone call, and he'd be gone. But I kept hearing my pop's voice in my head. "Don't just cut the weed. You gotta pull up the root." So, I bit my tongue. I went back to my apartment, stuck a bucket under the drip, and just let my anger build. This wasn't about a broken faucet anymore. This was personal. The breaking point, the moment I went from watching to doing, came on a Tuesday, and it was about Mrs. Gable again. Harrison found a new way to mess with her. He claimed she was 2 days late on rent, which she swore wasn't true, holding up a bank receipt as proof. He didn't care. As a penalty, he decided to clean out the small storage closet she paid an extra $15 a month for. I walked into the hall and saw him, a slick grin on his face, pulling her things out and just dumping them in a pile. It wasn't junk, it was her life. Old photo albums, a box of her late husband's things, a little rocking horse. "This is what happens when you don't follow the rules, Brenda," he said, loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. "Maybe this will teach you to pay on time." Mrs. Gable was begging him, her hands trembling as she tried to pick up her scattered pictures. "Please, Robert, these are all I have left of him." That was it. He had crossed the line. The quiet observer in me was gone, and the son of the man who owned this building was wide awake. I went back to my room, not to get mad, but to get even. My phone, which had felt like a useless brick for weeks, was suddenly the most powerful weapon I owned. I started by recording Harrison's little tantrums on the low. Then, I spent a whole day talking to every single tenant, writing down their stories, taking pictures of the fake bills, and stacking up a mountain of evidence on his fraud and abuse. That evening, I made one call. Not to my father, but to his most trusted lawyer, Arthur Vance, a man who's known me since I was a shorty. "Arthur, it's Leo," I said, my voice low. "It's worse than we thought. I got everything. I need you to draw up the papers for a hostile termination and a full takeover of the local management, and I need a team. Tomorrow morning, Oakwood Apartments. Be ready." There was a short pause. Then I heard Arthur's calm, steady voice. "Consider it done, Leo. We'll be there at 10 sharp." The next morning, Harrison was on a major power trip. He'd called a mandatory tenants meeting in the sad little community room, which was really just a basement with folding chairs and a water-stained ceiling. He stood at the front, chest all puffed out, grinning like a king talking to his peasants. "As you all know," he started, "I am dedicated to improving our community. That's why I'm excited to announce the Oakwood Luxury Initiative. To fund this, there will be a one-time special assessment fee of $200 per unit." Groans and whispers shot through the room. For most of these people, $200 was a whole week of groceries. I stood up. "What exactly is this luxury initiative going to involve, Mr. Harrison?" Every eye in the room turned to me. Harrison's smile vanished, replaced by a nasty scowl. He saw me as the ringleader and decided he was going to make an example out of me. He pointed a thick finger right in my face. "Look at this one," he said, his voice dripping with hate. "Our resident philosopher. Lives in the cheapest apartment, dressed in rags, probably ain't paid his phone bill in months, and he wants to question me. He wants details." He stepped closer, getting right up in my personal space. "This," he said, pointing at me for everyone to see, "is the kind of worthless, ungrateful tenant we're trying to filter out. People who contribute nothing and expect everything. People who don't belong here." I just stood there. I met his gaze and held it. I let his words hang in the air, let every single person hear them, let the disrespect sink in. I let him humiliate me one last time, because I knew something he didn't. I knew what was about to go down, and as he glared at me, thinking my silence was fear, a small, barely there smile touched my lips. Now, before I tell you about the beautiful sound of 5 black trucks pulling up outside and the look on Harrison's face when he finally figured out who I was, do me a solid. If you love stories where the bully gets exactly what's coming to them, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it means you won't miss the next time justice gets served. Just as Harrison was puffing his chest out to start another rant, a low, powerful rumble cut him off. It grew louder, the unmistakable sound of some serious engines. Everybody's head turned to the grimy basement windows. One by one, a fleet of 5 identical black SUVs pulled up to the curb, parking in a perfect, intimidating line. The community room door swung open. A man in a perfectly tailored 3-piece suit walked in, with 2 other dudes behind him who looked like they were carved out of granite. The man in the suit was Arthur Vance. His eyes scanned the room, passing over the shocked faces of the tenants before landing on Harrison, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. Then Arthur's eyes found me, and he gave me a slight, respectful nod. "Mr. Robert Harrison," Arthur said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "We're here from corporate headquarters to conduct an immediate and comprehensive audit." Harrison's face went pale. He started sputtering. "Corporate? I wasn't told about this. Everything is in order here." Arthur paid him no mind and walked directly to me. "Sir," he said, his tone formal and deep, "are you ready to proceed?" I stepped forward and it felt like I was shedding a skin. The slumped shoulders of Leo the writer straightened up into the confident posture of the man I was raised to be. I walked right past a stunned Harrison and took the thick folder Arthur handed me. I turned to face the room. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice clear and strong. For the last 3 months, you've known me as Leo. My real name is Leon Vance Jr. My family's company, Vance Holdings, owns this building and every other property this management company looks after. A collective gasp went through the room. All eyes were on me. Then they shot to Harrison, whose jaw was on the floor, his face a perfect picture of shock and horror. I opened the folder. For 3 months, I have lived here with you. I've seen the neglect, I've seen the disrespect, and I have documented every single piece of the scam this man has been running. I looked right at him. I have records of illegal fees, evidence of extortion, and signed statements from over a dozen tenants you have personally threatened. I took a step toward him. You publicly embarrassed a respected elder over a welcome mat. You tried to evict her based on a lie. And just a minute ago, you stood right here and you called me worthless. I paused, letting that word hang in the air between us. The only thing worthless here, Mr. Harrison, is your employment. I glanced at Arthur's men. He's fired. Effective immediately. Please escort him off the property. He doesn't touch his computer. He doesn't take a single thing from his office. Harrison finally found his voice, but it came out as a weak little squeak. You can't do this! I'll sue! Who do you think you are? He knows exactly who he is, Arthur said coldly, as the 2 men firmly grabbed Harrison by the arms. They marched him out of the room, his weak protests fading down the hall. I turned back to the tenants. I am so sorry for what all of you have been through, I said, and I meant every word. As of today, things are changing. All those so-called surcharges and fees are cancelled. Anyone who paid them will be fully reimbursed with interest. And Vance Holdings is investing $3 million to renovate this entire building starting next week. New plumbing, new wiring, new windows, and a new community centre. And your rent will not go up. A wave of applause and tearful relief just erupted in the room. I walked over to Mrs. Gable, who was looking at me with wide, stunned eyes. Mrs. Gable, I said softly, on behalf of my family, I want to apologize for everything Mr. Harrison put you through. As a small token of our respect, your rent is covered for the next 5 years. And we would be honored if you would be the first to move into a newly renovated 2-bedroom apartment on us. She burst into tears, happy tears this time, and threw her arms around me. That day, I learned more than I ever could have in a boardroom. My father sent me here to learn the value of our empire, but Mr. Harrison taught me the value of the people who live in it. Real power isn't about having a famous last name or a fleet of black trucks. It's about responsibility. It's about seeing worth where other people only see weakness and using your position not to put people down, but to lift them up. I came to Oakwood to fix a building, but in the end, I think the experience fixed something in me. So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.